Hi everyone, you are watching my YouTube channel Bachelor and Master English. Today, uh, I am going to talk about I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. She talks about her own experience, that's the early experience as a domestic servant, and her rebellion against her employer. Here she tries to show us openly about the courage a young girl needs to rise above the restriction of gender, class, and race. Okay, uh, this is the discussion of my Angelos, except from I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, and you're watching my YouTube channel Bachelor and Master English. And today's discussion, we shall be talking about the summary. There will be discussion in English and Nepali, and there will be comments regarding the text. I'm sure all of you will enjoy this, and all of you will continue until the end of this video. And if you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel. And if you think this video is worth watching, please don't forget to share and subscribe. Okay, here we go. Let's get started. Not long back, a white woman from Texas, considered as a liberal woman, asked the writer about hometown. When she told about herself, the white lady exclaimed, calling her a debutante, which the writer found ridiculous and laughable. But back in small southern towns, the Negro girls were given extensive and irrelevant preparations for adulthood, even among their poverty. But this was different than the white girls. For white, they learned to dance and sit gracefully with a teacup balanced on their knee. The Negro girls were for behind learning embroidery, which are mid Victorian values with every little money to indulge them. They had to do trunkfuls of colored dish towels, pillowcases, runners, and handkerchiefs to their credit. They had to learn to iron and even worse, but often details like setting a table with real silver, baking and cooking had to be learned else where they had to work. Maya, our writer's finishing school became white woman's kitchen. Her employer, Mrs. Baala Kolinan, was a plump woman whose house was behind the post office with 3 bedrooms. Her face looked like the marks of a mischievous elf with lines around her eyes and mouth, which made her work initially and looked very unattractive until she smiled. But she rarely smiled and reserved her smile until later afternoon when the woman friends came to see her. The rules in her house were very strict and inhuman. She was very punctual about her timings from every hour. For meals and all things had to be set in proper place. If it was placed elsewhere, it was an act of imprudent rebellion. It took Maya a week to learn the differences between salad plate, bread plate, and dessert plate. She kept up the tradition of her wealthy parents, although she had married beneath her. She could not have the children as the doctor had taken out her all lady organs. Maya was informed that Miss Cullinan had 2 daughters by a colored lady. Per week, she came early and walked up till late to keep Mrs. Cullinan company. Once she was told to serve the ladies on the porch. One of the ladies asked her name, and Mrs. Cullinan told her that it was Margaret. She went on telling her friends, and Maya was as quiet as a mouse and did not talk much and was a sweet little thing. One of her friends told her that Margaret was a long name, so she should be called Mary. Hearing this, she was very furious. Her employer could not even pronounce her name correctly, and she was not going to give up a chance to call her Mary. At first, she decided not to work for her, but later realized it would be foolish for her because Mrs. Cullinan did not know. That evening, she decided to write a poem on being white, fat, old, and without children, which was to be a lyrical ballad. For this, she had to watch her employer closely to capture the essence of her loneliness and pain. The next day, Mrs. Glory and she were cleaning up the dishes. Her employer came to her, calling her Mary. Hearing this, Miss Glory corrected her, saying that her name was Margaret, but her employer went on saying it was too long. Miss Glory knew it was insulting, for her real name was Halle Luja, but she was called Glory. Hearing this, the narrator was in turmoil, having the white woman rename her for her convenience. At the very moment she knew she had to quit the job, but her mother would not let her quit the job for just any season. From then on, she looked at her employer's face whenever she called her Mary. She began to neglect her work, hoping Miss Glory would complain, which she did not do. At last, Bailey solved his dilemma. He described her about the contents of the cupboard and about casseroles shaped like a fish and green glass coffee cups, which her employer liked best. So, when she was told to shove on the porch, she first dropped the empty serving tray and, hearing her employer screaming, Mary, she again picked up the casserole and two of the green glass cups and dropped them on the tilted floor. Seeing this, her employer fell on the floor and started crying. When someone asked her who did it and whether it was Mary, she objected, saying that her name was Margaret, and threw a broken plate at the narrator that caught Miss Glory over her ear, and she started howling. But even so, Mrs. Cullinan was right about one thing: the narrator's name wasn't Mary. Let me go with Nepali interpretation, Nepali summary. पिँजडाभित्र बसेको चरा किन गाउँछ त? यो माया एन्जेलोको एउटा चर्चित पुस्तकबाट लेखिएको निकालिएको एउटा अंश हामी यहाँ चर्चा गरिरहेका छौँ। यस लेखमा निबन्धकार माया एन्जेलोले आफू स्वयं एउटा गोरा जातिको घरमा नोकर्नी बसेर कार्यरत रहँदा पाएको अनुभव र ऊ त्यहाँको कामबाट अनि त्यहाँका अब उसलाई चाहिँ जागिर दिने, उसलाई काम दिने मालिकहरूबाट कसरी विद्रोही भएर घर छोडिन् भन्ने कुरा प्रश्न पारेको छ। अब दक्षिणी सहरमा बस्ने काला जातिका केटीहरूलाई व्यापक रूपमा तालिम दिइन्थ्यो। गोरा जातिका केटीहरूलाई नाचगान सिकाइन्थ्यो भने गरिब काला जातिका केटीहरूलाई भने कम पैसामा पुराना युगमा महत्त्व राख्ने कुराहरू सिकाइन्थ्यो। उनीहरूलाई कपास छुट्याउने, काट्ने, कपडा निर्माण गर्ने, बुट्टा काट्ने आदि जस्ता अप्ठ्यारा कार्यहरू सिकाइन्थ्यो। अनि यहाँ कथावाचक जुन छन् माया एन्जेलोको पात्र, अनि उनले पनि सानै उमेरमा यस्तो कार्य सिकेर 10 वर्षको उमेरमा नै श्रीमती कुलिन्यानको घरको भान्सामा कार्यरत हुन्छन्, जहाँ कुमारी ग्लोरी भन्ने स्वास्नी मानिस थिइन्। श्रीमती कुलिन्यानको सन्तान नहुने अवस्था थियो। उनले गोरा जातिको भइकन पनि आफूभन्दा तल्लो जातसँग बिहे गरेकी थिइन्। उनी ठिक समयमा खाने पिउने गर्थिन्। उनका घरमा भएका प्रशस्त सामग्रीहरू सधैँ ठिक स्थानमा राख्नु पर्थ्यो। ती सामग्रीहरूमा भाँडा, प्लेट, कप, गिलास आदि थिए। कुमारी ग्लोरी दास कुलमा जन्मेकी हुनाले त्यस घरमा कथावाचक कुमारी मार्गरेट मिलेर कार्य गर्छे। र श्रीमती कुलिन्यानको बारेमा जान्न चाहन्थे। एक दिन के भयो भन्दाखेरि कुलिन्यानको घरमा महिला पाहुना आएको बेलामा मार्गरेट खाना दिन गइन् र अनि त्यही बेलामा उनको नाम सोधियो। अनि उनलाई त्यो पाहुनाले नाम सोधेपछि मार्गरेट भन्दा त्यस्तो लामो नाम कसरी किन राखेको भन्ने त भइहाल्यो भन्ने कुरा छ। उनलाई यस्तो गोरो आइमेको कुराले चुट पुर्यायो, किनभने गोरा जातिका महिलाले काला जातिका मानिसको नामै बिगार्ने र जसरी बोलाउँदा पनि सहिलो हुन्छ त्यसै गरिदिने, त्यो उनीहरूको एउटा आत्मसम्मानमा चाहिँ एउटा धक्का लागेको उनले महसुस गरे। कुमारी ग्लोरीको नाम बिगारिदिएको हुन्छ। त्यसपछि मार्गरेट विद्रोही बन्छ र त्यस्तो परिवारको घरमा बसेर कुनै कार्य निर्णय गर्छिन् र आफ्नो दाजुसँग सल्लाह गरेर कुलिन्यानको भान्सामा मिलाएर राखेका सामग्रीहरू मध्येका केही भाँडाहरू भुइँमा खसाली फुटाउन र अनि खोदतलास भएपछि श्रीमती कुलिन्यानको मुखबाट त्यो फुटाउने म्यारी होइन, त्यो मार्गरेट हो भन्ने उच्चारण आयो। अनि त्यसको टुक्राले हान पनि भन्यो। त्यसैले कुलिन्यानले आखिर मार्गरेटलाई मार्गरेट भनेर उच्चारण गर्नु नि ठिक थियो, त्यो नै वास्तवमा उनको सही नाम थियो पनि। यसरी एउटा गोरा जातको मान्छेले काला जातको एउटा महिलालाई कसरी हेपे, त्यो हेपाइबाट उसको आत्मसम्मानमा कति चाहिँ एउटा धक्का लाग्यो, त्यसैले उसको मनमा कस्तो एउटा काँडो बिज्यो, त्यो कुरा यो कथा जोडिएको एउटा निबन्धात्मक लेखमा एउटा मान्छेको व्यक्तिगत जिन्दगीसँग सम्बन्धित कुरा हो। यो एउटा एक खालको अटोबायोग्राफी, अब आत्मकथाको एउटा चाहिँ पाटो छ यहाँ। अनि यो जुन पिँजडाभित्र बसेको चरो, त्यो त्यहाँ काम गर्ने एउटा कामदार हो। अनि त्यो कामदार किन चाहिँ उसको मालिकसँग विद्रोह गर्छ त? कामदारले उसको मालिकलाई किन मन पराउँदैन? किनभने मालिकले कामदारलाई सम्मान गर्न जानेकै छैन, उसले सधैँ अपमान गर्छ, उसको नाम बिगारिदिन्छ, उसलाई चाहिँ अब धेरै उसको मनमा असर पर्ने, उसको दिमागमा अथवा मानसिक अवस्थामा एउटा असर पार्ने कुराहरू मात्र गर्छ। अनि उसलाई आफ्नो सम्मान पनि छैन, अनि आफ्नो एउटा कमाइ पनि राम्रो छैन, र अनि उसलाई गर्ने व्यवहार, अरू घरमा पाहुना आउँदाखेरि उसलाई चाहिँ गरिने व्यवहार पनि असह्य हुन्छ। त्यसपछि उसको विकल्प भनेको के हो त? विद्रोह नै त्यसको विकल्प हो भन्ने सोचेर जो मालिकले आफ्नो कामदारलाई अपमान गर्छ, त्यो मालिकलाई ठेगान लगाउनको लागि चाहिँ उसका चाहिँ सामानहरू तोडफोड गर्ने, फुटालिदिने, अनि त्यसपछि उसलाई चाहिँ उसको चाहिँ एउटा आक्रोशपूर्ण स्वरहरू चाहिँ सुन्ने, अनि त्यही बेलामा फेरि उसलाई बाज्ने, र अनि पर्यो भने त्यसलाई फुटेका चिजहरूबाट उसलाई हानेर उसलाई पनि एउटा हानि तुल्याउने। त्यसो गरिसकेपछि ऊ सही ठाउँमा आउँछ र मैले चाहिँ गरेको कुरा गल्ती रहेछ भनेर महसुस गर्छ। मान्छेले चाहिँ एउटा मालिकले त्यो खालको कुरा महसुस गर्यो भने कामदारले पनि आफूले सम्मान पाएको महसुस गर्छ। अन्यथा जसरी चाहिँ पिँजडाको भित्र बसेको चरा कराएको हुन्छ, पिँजडाभित्र बसेको चरा चाहिँ त्यहाँबाट मुक्ति पायो भने ऊ उडेर जान्छ। यस्तै यहाँ माया एन्जेलोको पात्र जुन एउटा त्यहाँ कथा बोक्ने पात्र छ, त्यो पात्र के छ त भन्दा मार्गरेट, ऊ पनि त्यहाँको एउटा विद्रोही पात्रको रूपमा हुन्छ। यहाँको यो एउटा विद्रोहीको भूमिका खेल्ने र अनि त्यसको गोरा जातिका मान्छेहरूलाई सबक सिकाउनको लागि चाहिँ उसले ठुलो काम गरे। अब यहाँ एउटा दुःख कुरो के छ भन्दाखेरि कसैले आफ्नो जातभन्दा बाहिरको, आफ्नो चाहिँ रङभन्दा बाहिरको मान्छेसँग बिहा गर्यो भने महिलालाई उसको यौनाङ्गसहित त्यसबाट चाहिँ निकालेर उसलाई चाहिँ उसको जुन महिलाको रूपमा चाहिँ उसले गर्नुपर्ने, उसले पाउनुपर्ने, उसले चाहिँ उपभोग गर्नुपर्ने, र उसले त्यो महिलाको आफ्नो एउटा मातृत्व प्राप्त गर्नको लागि, मातृवात्सल्य चाहिँ आफ्नो बच्चालाई दिनको लागि, आफ्नो श्रीमानबाट बच्चा पाउनको लागि उसका अङ्गहरू पनि काम नलाग्ने बनाइदिन्छ। यो कतिसम्म ज्यादती छ, कतिसम्म अत्याचार गरिएको छ मान्छेलाई। एउटा गोरो जातको मान्छेले कालो जातको मान्छेसँग बिहा गर्यो भन्दैमा उसको त्यतिसम्म अपमान गर्ने अनि काला जातका मान्छेलाई त्यसरी हेप्ने, तिनीहरूलाई दुःख चाहिँ उनीहरूले चाहिँ अलिकति राम्रो, उनीहरूलाई पनि त राम्रोसँग व्यवहार गर्यो भने उनीहरूले पनि सिक्छन्, उनीहरूलाई किन अपमान गरिन्छ त? अनि त्यही खालको एउटा यस्तो अपमान गरिन्छ भनेपछि धेरैजना यस्तै मान्छेहरूले थाहा पायो भने एउटा विद्रोहको ज्वाला दन्काउनको लागि माया एन्जेलोले गोराहरूको चाहिँ कालाहरूप्रति, गोरा महिलाहरूले अथवा गोरा जुन एउटा मान्छेहरूले काला जातका मान्छेहरूलाई गर्ने व्यवहारप्रति आक्रोश व्यक्त गर्नको लागि यो निबन्ध लेखे हो। ओके, नाउ she doesn't like being called Mary, and there is a hellish horror when she is being called out Mary. The value, importance, or significance of a person's name is that it is the personal identity of a person, and people call her exactly, okay, appropriately. The incorrect pronunciation of someone's name is to humiliate and dominate or ridicule that person. One feels extreme fear or dislike as suffering in hell when being called out his or her name. The white insult the Negro by constructing other names in place of the original correct name. Why do you think Negro girls were taught or trained in mid-Victorian values? That is a question. I think they were taught or trained in mid-Victorian values for no one, for not to allow them to progress and advance. With the skill, they get only little money. Then that what did not follow that the concept of child labor, human right, and proper wages system, they totally disregarded. They turned deaf ears to all these rights of these black children and their future. This is also a part of insult, the way to provide for racial segregation. And here is another question. Why does the narrator consider these preparations irrelevant? The narrator considers this separation irrelevant because they are respectively given training of a trade and not from the broad perspective. They should be freely given chance of developing their future career. What was Miss Glory's opinion of Mrs. Cullinan? Miss Glory's opinion of Miss Cullinan was positive. Miss Glory was a descendant of slaves that had worked for the Cullinans. Therefore, she would not let anyone say a thing against Mrs. Cullinan. She was so loyal to her mistress that she accepted her mistress, renaming her for convenience. She considered her to be too delicate, born to have children. And here is another question. Why or what were Margaret's different opinions of Mrs. Cullinan? According to Margaret, Mrs. Viola Cullinan was a plump, unattractive lady who had a face like the marks of impish alb, who seldom smiled. The rule of her house was inhuman, and to flesh things elsewhere was considered an act of impudent rebellion. She was very punctual for her meal. She pitied Mrs. Cullinan for her earnest. She considered her a horrible woman for calling her Mary. She excused her mistress' behavior, saying she was innocent. The narrator burst out laughing when telling the story of the way she lost her job. She decided to quit the job but did not know how to do it, as her mother would not let her quit for just any reason. Bailey helped her out this problem. He described her about the contents of the cupboard and about a casserole shaped like a fish and a green glass coffee cups, which Mrs. Cullinan liked best. So when she was told to serve on the porch, she first dropped the empty serving tray, and hearing her mistress screaming, "Mary!" she again picked up the casserole, and two of the green glass cups are dropped them on the tilted floor. Seeing this, her mistress fell on the floor and screwed up very ugly face to cry. Seeing her wobbling around the floor, picking up shards of cup and crying out of her mother, made her burst out laughing. We talked about I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings by my Angelou. This is not the entire text, this is the excerpt that begins with recently a white woman from Texas who would quickly describe herself as liberal to Miss Cullinan was right about one thing: my name wasn't Mary. Okay, I'm sure you got the points. If you have any queries, please don't forget to put your queries in my comment box. I should be very much thankful for your time and patience